Contrarian view, but building a waiting list for your no-code app is more valuable than your no-code app itself. Unfortunately, most people aren't doing this. In fact, we recently did a survey, and over 40% of no-code app entrepreneurs said they're not actually doing any sort of user outreach until after they finish building their app. Now, look, I totally get it. I mean, if only we could lock ourselves away in our office and just build the product until it's actually finished and perfect in our eyes, and then launch and immediately become successful. But unfortunately, that's just not the way it works. And in fact, the number one most important thing you can be doing for your app right now, no matter what stage you're at, whether you are in your idea stage or in development, is to start building a waiting list of users who can come onto your app after you launch. And look, this might sound simple, but going back to that survey, over 40% of people are not doing any sort of user outreach until they finish building their app. But you have to be doing user outreach in order to build that waiting list. There are 3 stages in which this waiting list is actually going to be of incredible value to you. One of those is in the pre-build phase, where you are still in the planning phase, you are still in the idea phase with your app. Now, the next one is in the actual build phase, where you are using no-code tools to build your app. And then the last one is in the launch phase, where you are now bringing those first users on board and rolling out your app to your wider target market. Now, a little bit later, we're going to talk about what user outreach can look like in each of these stages, but let's go ahead and start by talking about the pre-build stage. So you want to be doing some really easy and straightforward user outreach during this time in order to build a waiting list. Now, a waiting list is really just an email list, right? It's as simple as that. It's a collection of emails from people within your target market who are interested in and the right fit for the type of app that you are going to be providing them. Okay, now when you build a waiting list of interested prospective users during your pre-build phase, then this is going to give you a lot of, number one, validation. Okay, so you're still in that app idea phase, and this is going to justify you moving forward, whether that means spending more time or more money in pursuing this app idea. But to put it really simply, if you start talking to people about your app idea and they sign up to your email list because they want to be users of it when it comes out, that's really good justification that you should invest more of your resources and energy into pursuing this. Now, this is also going to lead to you making better decisions. Okay, because when you are doing user outreach, and again, we'll talk about what this can look like, but just really simply talking about your app to people, you're going to see what resonates with them and what doesn't. And that's going to allow you to inform your decisions for the app moving forward. It can inform which features you include or maybe how you include them, but you actually have feedback or, again, just simply validation so that you can make better decisions and ultimately lead to a more successful launch. Now let's look at the build phase. Okay, so when we're in this build phase, we've gotten that validation, that justification to move forward, then essentially you're going to be building your app using no-code tools while you are doing user outreach simultaneously. Now, it's important that we don't make user outreach seem too complicated, because then it's going to feel hard to balance these two things at the same time. But really, we want to simplify both of them so that you can. Because the reality is, when you are building a waiting list, when you are still in development, that's going to lead to 2 things. One of these things is going to be immediate feedback. And this is so incredibly important. You want to be able to launch your app as soon as it's done and get immediate feedback from your users. Because look, one of the worst things that can happen is for you to spend all of this time building your app only to finally launch and to not have any users to come on board. Because I'm telling you this now because I want to help you prepare and avoid this. If you launch your app and you've put in all this time and all this effort into building it. And then all of a sudden you have nobody to use it. And now you have to figure out how to find those people. When you already have your product, you're gonna feel defeated, right? It's like you've finally come over this big obstacle of building the app, and now you have to face something entirely new and different. You want to set yourself up for success and to just get that immediate feedback. And ultimately, if you get that immediate feedback, that's going to lead to the most important thing, which is faster monetization. Okay, AKA you are making money with your app sooner. All right, again, you don't want to spend all this time building the app and then have to tackle this brand new obstacle basically from square one. Get the immediate feedback so that you can start charging your users and getting that revenue building up. When you can do that, right, when you actually see something coming back from all of the effort you've put in, an ROI, a return on investment, it's going to make everything you're doing, all the sacrifices you're making, the work you're putting in, the hours, it's going to make it all worth it. Now let's look at the next phase, which is the launch phase. Now, this is where things get really exciting, and not for the obvious reasons, the fact that you are launching your app, but the reality is you can have a product and that's great. The product can be very valuable in and of itself. But if you have an email list or just a pool of prospective users alongside that, you have just increased your value exponentially, because a community or an audience or an email list, that alone is more valuable than any feature set you could ever build. If you have an audience or, again, an email list that you know is full of people who fit within a certain target market and have a specific problem that they need solved, well, at the end of the day, you can pivot as many times as you need to in order to solve their problems, or maybe even different problems, if you end up not moving forward with that first app idea. If you have that email list or that audience or a community, right, you can do that so much more easily. That is where your value lies, because you can create multiple products for them if you want to, right? So it's so much more valuable to add that onto your product than to just have your app itself. If you have spent time building this waiting list, once you get to your launch phase, obviously that means you're going to have users, which is going to get you that immediate feedback and that faster monetization. But ultimately, that's also going to lead you to faster growth overall. So not just getting to the point of monetization faster, but actually growing your business as a whole faster. And then to add on top of that, you're going to have, like we talked about, a more valuable business as a whole. And notice I say more valuable business, not more valuable app. And that is the important thing. You want value in your business on top of just the value that your specific feature set or your app provides. Now, I mentioned that we really want to simplify both user outreach and development when you're in that middle build phase. And this is something we help our own entrepreneurs do in our private program. But you want to simplify both of them so that they can happen simultaneously, and you don't just have to, siphon off into one or the other. There are 3 specific ways you can really simplify your user outreach in the build phase. One of those is to pick your main user acquisition channel. In other words, where are you going to be reaching out to people in order to build up this waiting list? Maybe for you, that means going on to social media platforms, maybe something like Facebook groups. Or maybe for you, that means going to direct businesses, so going door to door. Right, so whatever it is for you, pick one that you can put all of your effort in the beginning. The second thing is to pick 3 or more businesses, groups, people, whatever it may be, to reach out to every single day in the second half of your pilot app development. Ideally, we want this to take around 3 months, so the second half is going to be around 6 weeks. So I want you to find 3 people, groups, businesses, again, whatever that is for you, and I want you to Put those three into a calendar for 6 weeks straight, or at the very minimum, at least for a month. And the third really simple thing to do is just start the outreach every single day and make it a habit during that time. That might sound like a lot, it might not, but here are a few extra tips to make it a little bit more palatable. Whatever type of outreach you are doing, whether you are posting in Facebook groups or having literal conversations, maybe you're sending emails, the first thing is just to really just act like a human, okay? Talk to people as if they're people. You really don't need to be salesy or pushy or promotional about your app itself. You really need to be just adding value to conversations, adding perspectives, asking people about the problems they're experiencing and the consequences of those problems, what they've tried to solve them, how they could potentially solve them with the idea that you have or the product that you're building. Would they be helped by something like this, right? You can have human to human conversations, and that can build your waiting list in these early days. The next thing to remember is that consistency is key. I see a lot of people giving up after they have put up a few posts or maybe sent a handful of emails and not gotten responses. But consistency is key. That's why we have a little bit of outreach every single day over an extended period of time, because you're not going to hear back from a lot of people. Some of the posts you put up are not going to get any traction. That's just the reality, and that's okay. What's not okay is for you to just say, oh, well, it must not work, and then to kind of give up on the outreach and just go back to building your app, which is the easier thing to do, right? Consistency is key. And a really important thing to remember is the type of outreach that you're doing in the earlier stages with your app is going to be unscalable. Okay, so if you are trying to automate your outreach so that you can blast tons of people at the same time and you can just kind of sit back and again go back to just building your app, that's not going to work. In these earlier stages, you have to be manually having conversations with people, because unless you do that, you're not going to understand what types of conversations actually compel people to join your waiting list. And so you can't automate and scale something that you have not validated yet, or at least you shouldn't put the time and effort into doing that, because it's wasted time and effort. Have these conversations. Take the time that it takes. Again, it's just a little bit every single day with consistency, and you are going to see tremendous results on the other side. Now, look, there are lots of other things that you need to be doing even before you get to this point. Strategies you need to be following, tactics that you need to employ. And I want you to start over at coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop, where we're going to walk you through the steps that it takes to become a successful no-code app entrepreneur, including everything from making sure your first version app is packed full of value to making sure you're using no-code tools correctly so that you can build a scalable application. Head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop so you can join in on the free extended training there.